ॐ स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः. Namaskar to all of you. Welcome to the study of Ramakrishna, the Great Master. We will first start with the brief life of Mathuranath, and then we will proceed to the study of the Sadhaka life of Sri Ramakrishna. It was hard for Mathur to live without Sri Ramakrishna's holy company. So wherever he went, he took the master with him. Once they took a pleasant boat trip on the Ganga to visit one of the Mathur's estates near Rana Ghat in West Bengal. At Rana Ghat, Sri Ramakrishna was overwhelmed with grief when he saw the miserable condition of the villagers. So we have to note that Ramakrishna had the relief work performed for the second time here. First was in Devagar, where the tribal poor people there were fed, clothed, and given oil. Now again, when he went with Mathurnath to his hometown or home village, now Mathur took Ramakrishna to a pleasant boat trip on Ganga to visit one of Mathur's estates near Ranaghat in West Bengal. At Ranaghat, Sri Ramakrishna was overwhelmed with grief when he saw the miserable condition of the villagers, and he asked Mathur to feed and clothe them. As usual, at first Mathur was reluctant, but later he carried out the master's wishes. During this excursion, they also visited Mathur's birthplace at Khulna, where they stayed a few weeks. From there, they returned to Calcutta. In 1870, Mathur took the master by boat to visit Navadvipa. Dvipa means islands, Nava means new. So Navadvipa may be the flow of Ganga, because there may be so many tributaries, it might have created a island-like situation there. So that might have been named as Navadvipa, or some other reason may also be there. But that Navadvipa is very famous from days of yore as the seat of learning for Nyaya Shastra. In India, in Indian system, education system, there is one thing called logic. That's called Nyaya Shastra. There are so many different scriptures and other things, knowledge to be studied under Veda, Vedanta. So this Nyaya Shastra is also one of them, to study logic. So this place, Navadvipa, from time immemorial, it was famous for that great learners and scholars in this field. Many people used to visit that place in olden days to learn this Nyaya Shastra. And another important thing of this place is the great leader of the Vaishnava Sampradaya, Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Gauda Desha means Bengal. Bengal has another name called Gauda Desha. So that Gaudiya Vaishnavism, just like there are so many Shaivism, Shaktism, then Vaishnavism. Gujarat, they have a different Vaishnavism. You go to Rajasthan, they have a different way they practice Vaishnavism. If you come to Tamil Nadu, there is Tamil Shaivism and Vaishnavism. So like that, in different parts of India, you find different schools of thoughts. So like that, you can see Gaudiya Vaishnavism means the Vaishnavism which started in Bengal. Gauda Desha means Bengal. And it was the main leader or the main proponent of that Gaudiya Vaishnavism is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is considered to be one of the avatars. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu birthplace is also in this Navadvipa. Now I think since he's also the main leader of the ISKCON, Krishna consciousness, they have built a very, very big temple of Krishna, ISKCON people near in this area, very big, one of the biggest in the globe. So now Ramakrishna also visited this place, Navadvipa. So in 1870, Mathur took the master by boat to visit Navadvipa, the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. On the way, they stopped at Kalna in the district of Vardhamana, which is called as Bardwan. So the original name in Sanskrit is Vardhamana. Vardhamana means progressing, developing, development. That is the meaning for Vardhamana. So that has become verb becomes ba in Bengali language, and it has become Bardwan, where they met Bhagavan Das, a Vaishnava saint, a very great Vaishnava saint who had progressed forward in spiritual life. So they met this great saint Bhagavan Das Babaji. Mathur donated some money to Bhagavan Das Ashrama to have a special festival held on an auspicious day, so that so many devotees will be fed there and the service of the Lord is done there. So if you give donations, charity, you give food and other things in the religious places, the belief is they get lot of merit, punya. That's why in India, they may, whatever may be the businessmen, they may be very stingy and conjuice and selfish, but they have this habit of feeding and giving charity to the ashramas and monks, that is especially the Babajis, that they do definitely they will get punya, merit. So Mathur donated some money to Bhagavan Das Ashrama to have a special festival held on the auspicious day. For 14 years, Mathur moved with Sri Ramakrishna like a shadow. And as a result, a great transformation came over his life. His haughtiness and pride of wealth and learning slowly left him through the master's spiritual influence. You can note that while he had pestered Sri Ramakrishna for samadhi and other things, Ramakrishna had told him, it's not necessary, you do the service, you do my service, you serve me, that is more than enough. It will give you everything. And he had not agreed to the words of master and he wanted the samadhi, and you know that Ramakrishna gave him and he couldn't withstand that. And how Ramakrishna took it back and all that story we narrated earlier. Now, as the words of Sri Ramakrishna will never go untrue, after 14 years, he moved with Sri Ramakrishna, just his presence with Sri Ramakrishna, his service to Sri Ramakrishna, the great avatara, because he followed him like a shadow and served him so much. As a result, so one is satsanga and another is service. So doing service to great people, it gives you a lot of, especially the people who have gone forward in spiritual life, it will give you a lot of punya. So I have to just mention one word of Holy Mother Sharda Devi. Once the author Shardanandaji Maharaj, we all know that one of the great direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, Shardanandaji Maharaj, he was sick. He was bedridden at that time. So one householder devotee served him so much to the extent that because Shardanandaji in his old age, he was very bedridden and he had so much of that particular, only few days his sickness was too much. One householder devotee went to the extent of serving him, even cleaning his toilet and other things. So when Holy Mother came to know about that his service to that great soul Shardanandaji Maharaj, then Holy Mother retorted, or she was very much happy that that person is served. Well, even people, great souls, or spiritual aspirants like Shardanandaji Maharaj, even the householder devotee, if he does that service of cleaning his toilet even once, these were the words of Sharda Devi, even once, his place in heaven is already guaranteed. He's done it so many times, but even once, if he cleans the toilet of that great person like Shardanandaji Maharaj, great soul, his place in heaven is already guaranteed. But if he has the desire to enjoy this world, yes, he will get heaven and earth. But if he wants liberation, he doesn't want anything, that also can be got. If he has worldly desire to enjoy this world, heaven will be there. And if he doesn't have the desire to enjoy this world, then liberation. So these were the words. So service to great souls, the realized souls, those who have seen God, it earns the highest merit. To please them, to serve them, gives the highest merit. So here we can see, because of that service and the satsanga, the divine presence of the great soul like Sri Ramakrishna, Mathur, his so many transformation could be seen in his life. So as a result, a great transformation came over his life. His haughtiness due to ego, we all know so much of ego and haughtiness will be there. His pride of wealth and learning slowly left him through the master's spiritual influence. His deep love and regard for Sri Ramakrishna gradually brought his mind to a very higher state. So what can you note here? By serving the human beings, the diseased, the poor people, seeing God in them, because the highest manifestation of God is in the human beings. The highest manifestation amongst all the animals is human beings. So if you, the still higher manifestation is in the people who are going to seek God, mumukshus, jignasus, who want to realize God. The highest manifestation is in the people who have realized God. So serving human beings, seeing God in them, will yield you a lot of good results, punya. That's why Ramakrishna has introduced that amongst his devotees, amongst the followers, Shiva Gnane Jiva Seva. So seeing Lord Shiva, seeing Lord Narayana, or Divine Mother, or God in all the living beings and serving them gives you the quickest and the surest way to liberation, God realization. Or if you want worldly enjoyment, you can get heaven and all the other things, whatever you want. But if your desire is for liberation, the quickest and the surest and the very fastest mode to go towards spiritual thing is made very easy. Ramakrishna has brought down, as Vivekananda used to tell, the highest practical Vedanta, Shiva Gnane Jiva Seva. It's so easy. Serving, we all serve our father, mother, we serve the children, the wife, the husband, the other relatives when they are sick. But if you just change your attitude, doing all that service, just change your attitude to see the Lord, Shiva Gnane Jiva Seva, seeing your own Ishtadevata in those people while you are serving. Anyhow, you are serving. I will give you an example which is told in India. There is a saying in India called Kayi Tappidaga Krishnarpana. Suppose something I'm going to lose from my hand. Then anyhow, why should I waste that opportunity? Let me offer it to Lord Krishna and I will gain at least some punya. Whatever you offer to the Lord, you will gain some punya. So let me not waste that opportunity. I will tell you that story. What is that story? There was one mother in the house. She had kept the milk to heat because that is the thing, the pasteurized milk will not be available in India in the villages. Nowadays, all the pasteurized milk is done, is there, but even then, the habit of heating the milk and keeping warm and killing the bacteria and other things. So that is the practice from old. So how do they get milk in villages? They get directly from the cow, and the milk will be supplied to the houses, and they boil it nicely. So when it is boiled above 200 degrees centigrade or 100 degrees centigrade, the bacteria and viruses will die. And after that, they will cool it, then they will use it for the consumption. So the boiling process, she kept it on the stove or the oven, and the milk is getting heated. So she doesn't want to waste time. So now multitasking. So that what shall she doesn't have the habit of doing japa or taking the name of the Lord or meditating, doing Manasa Puja just like Holy Mother used to do, or great souls will do. So the immediate thing, multitasking, is she wanted to go to the neighbor's house, which was just near the compound, come out of the kitchen, and she gets the compound, and her neighbor, another lady, is there. So chit chatting is the easiest way to spend the time pass. So she came there and started chit chatting. All the news of the world, of the neighbors and the village, everything started coming out there. They were so happily conversing. Then suddenly she started hearing the sound of the hissing, the hissing sound. And her mind went there. She now remembered, oh, I've kept the milk on the oven. So it is about to come up because it is boiled sufficiently. You know that now it will start coming up and falling down. So she ran to stop that, to put off the oven, take out that milk vessel. But by the time she entered the kitchen, she saw already the milk had come almost above the vessel and it about to fall down. So once the milk falls down to the ground, now it's waste. It will be wasted. You can't use it. You have to throw it away, or you have to sweep it, or wipe it, mop it. The cleaning process. Now she was very much perturbed. In few seconds, millionth of a second, her mind started working. We should not waste this opportunity. Milk is so costly. Maybe now 1 liter, maybe there in India, 30 rupees or 40 rupees. In South Africa, I do not know. I don't go to do the purchases. I don't know the cost of the milk of 1 liter. But whatever there now, it will be wasted. So she was now in a quandary. What shall I do? I should not waste that milk. It's going to fall down. I have even heated it. So much of that heating process, that cost is also gone. Milk cost of the milk is also gone. Everything will be wasted. Suddenly, an idea. She got the idea. Now let me offer this to God. Anyhow, it will be wasted. I had no habit of offering and other things. Now, if it is anyhow getting wasted, it will go out of my hand. If I now offer it to God, at least that will be wasted. Milk will be gone. But if I offer it to God, then that I will get little punya. Why should I waste that opportunity? And immediately before that milk started pouring out and falling down to the ground, she started shouting, Krishna Arpanamastu, Krishna Arpanamastu, Krishna Arpanamastu. She offered it to Lord Krishna. So that's why they get that usage is there in India. When it goes out of your hand, anyhow, it is going to go slip out of your hands. It will be wasted. So why do you waste that opportunity? Offer it to Lord. Offer it to the Lord. At least you will get little. Anyhow, it is going to waste it. If you offer it to Lord, at least it will be giving you some punya. So that is the thing. So now let us apply that into our life. What are we doing? We have to serve. We have to do the work in our day-to-day chores, everything. Washing the vessels, cleaning, cooking, serving the needy, the old, serving father, serving mother, talking to them, keeping them happy, serving the husband, serving the wife, serving the children, serving the other people who are coming there as guests. So anyhow, you are doing all those work as a drudgery, as a monotony, as a just, oh, so much of work. I should have been enjoying my life. I should have been sleeping, watching the TV. I have to be doing so much, all that work with that bad attitude will be serving. Now, anyhow, you'll be wasting your work, so much of energy of the body. But now, just like that lady, when it is going to slip out of the hand, She offered it to Lord. Anyhow, all this work, because of your attitude, wrong attitude, you're wasting that opportunity. Now, offer it to the Lord. Anyhow, it will slip away. It will be wasted. You have to work. You don't have any other goal. You have to work, serve the parents, serve the distinct children, serve the husband, serve the other people, guests who come, serve the other relatives who are coming to your house. Now, don't waste this opportunity. Anyhow, the energy, the service, everything is going to be wasted. Whatever you do, sweeping, mopping, cooking, anything, talking, offer it to the Lord. Krishna Arpanamastu. Everything offer it to the Lord. At least that which is going slipping out of your hand, it will earn you some punya. Not only punya, some punya. It will completely transform you. It will take to the spiritual heights. So don't waste the opportunity. Start from now onwards itself, offering every bit. Whatever you do, you have to do the office work. You have to go to the office. You are now driving the car. Offer it to your Ishtadeva. Then you go to the car and park it, and that parking energy is there. Offer it to the Lord. Krishna Arpana, Ramakrishna Arpana, Shiva Arpana, Durga Arpana, whatever. Then go to the office. You have to do the work, office work. You'll be paid for that. Don't worry. Offer it to the Lord. Everything, every bit, every second. You drink a cup of coffee, offer it to the Lord. And you have done the meeting. After the meeting, offer it to the Lord. So everything, just offering the Lord, all that would have been wasted if you offer it to the Lord, will now transform you, and it will so nicely take you to the Lord. Very big transformation. So, though it is funny, Kai Tappidaga Krishna Arpana, just to, when it is going slipping out of hand, everything, the whole life is being wasted, offer it to the Lord, and it will be completely fulfilled, and you will have a very fulfilled life. It will transform your life into spiritual life. Offer it every second, every bit offer. That's why I say after the class, we tell that mantra and tell Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. You tell a mantra, you tell a chanting, and we tell Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. Let everything be offered to the Lord. Every action, your breathing, your thinking, after that, offer it to the Lord. So every second of yours will become spiritual life. Now, like that, you can see Mathur didn't waste his opportunity. He started doing the service to the Lord in that manner. Ramakrishna. So he's serving it, and now there's a transformation. So that master's spiritual influence, his deep love and regard for Sri Ramakrishna gradually brought his mind into a higher state. Once Mathur had a large abscess. You know what is an abscess? It's a growth on the body. So once Mathur had a large abscess, unhealthy growth, and was bedridden for a long time in his Calcutta residence. He desperately wanted to see the master. Master is away in Dakshineshwar. He is in a house far away from there. He desperately wanted to see master, but Sri Ramakrishna would not come. The master told the messenger that he had no power to cure the abscess. So his visit would be of no avail. At last, after repeated requests from Mathur, Sri Ramakrishna came to his house. When Mathur saw him, he said, "Father, give me a little dust of your feet." Sri Ramakrishna replied, "What good will it do? Will it cure your abscess?" Mathur now replied, "Father, Baba, am I so mean? Do you think after your company, your satsanga for so many years, am I still mean that I'll waste your foot dust for the curing of small diseases? Am I so mean? Baba, am I so mean? Do you think I want the dust of your feet to cure my abscess? Doctors are there for that. Doctors can do that. If I pay some money, doctors will cure that. Doctors are there for that purpose. I want the dust of your feet in order to cross the ocean of Maya. See, so much of transformation. Earlier, for the sake of his riches, earlier for the enjoyments, earlier to rule like a king, all worldly things. Now there is so much of transformation in him. See, the words itself is every word of yours can reveal your mind. Just one word, just one tone, change in tone can show what is your thought. because whatever is our thought comes out through the form of words. So we can understand just by the change in tone and the usage of words what you are feeling, that will convey it. You may be hiding so many things, but the tone, tenor, the what do you call, the words used there can bring out the truth. Now you can see how much of transformation is there. He's telling Sri Ramakrishna, Father, am I so mean? Do you think I want the dust of your feet for curing my abscess or disease? Doctors are there for that purpose. I want the dust of your feet in order to cross the ocean of Maya. Hearing this, Sri Ramakrishna merged into Samadhi. Ramakrishna was so happy when he heard that the transformation in Mathur, so much spiritual transformation. Hearing that, Sri Ramakrishna went into Samadhi. So I have told you, when Ramakrishna would be in Samadhi, then what would happen? Gadadhara Vishnu will come out. The real Ramakrishna, that ancient being who had been born as Sri Ramakrishna, the Avatara, who was Rama, who was Krishna. So that ancient being will come out in Samadhi. So Ramakrishna, hearing this, Sri Ramakrishna merged into Samadhi. Mathur then put his head on the feet of the master and received his blessing. But he recovered in a short time later. So that abscess was gone. So though his idea, but here we have to note the transformation. How he was, how worldly he was, how stingy he was, conjuice, and he would not spend money, how selfish he was. All the vices were there. But due to the touch, due to the presence of Sri Ramakrishna, service to Sri Ramakrishna, how there was a transformation, complete transformation. So much spiritual outlook could be seen. So the words have to be heard again, which those words sent Ramakrishna to Samadhi. Father, am I so mean? Do you think I want the dust of your feet to cure my abscess or disease? Doctors are there for that purpose. I want the dust of your feet in order to cross the ocean of Maya, to reach God, for God realization. Hearing this, Sri Ramakrishna merged into Samadhi. Mathur then put his head on the feet of Master and received his blessing. He recovered a short time later. Once, while in an ecstatic mood, Sri Ramakrishna said to Mathur, as long as you are alive, I shall be in Dakshineshwar. Once, while in an ecstatic mood, Sri Ramakrishna said to Mathur, as long as you are alive, I shall be in Dakshineshwar, but after that I will leave Dakshineshwar. Then Mathur was startled to hear. He was very afraid. He told, what is this, Master? Baba, you're telling like that you will leave my Dakshineshwar. You'll go away from Dakshineshwar. You'll be there only until I leave. I'm alive. Will you go away after that? Mathur was startled to hear that, because he knew it was the Divine Mother herself who was protecting not only him, but his family also. He humbly said, why do you say so, Father? My wife and son, Dwaraka, are also very much devoted to you. My son Dwaraka and wife are also devoted to you. Then Ramakrishna told, all right, said the master. I shall remain as long as your wife and Dwaraka are alive. And as a matter of fact, they had all passed away by the time Sri Ramakrishna left Dakshineshwar in 1885. Soon Mathur's part in Sri Ramakrishna's divine drama came to an end on July 14, 1871. Mathur passed away. He died of typhoid fever after a short illness. Sri Ramakrishna did not go to see him while he was ill, but sent Hriday every day, kept except the last day. That day, Mathur was taken to Kalighat a holy place in South Calcutta. Sri Ramakrishna meanwhile became absorbed in deep samadhi in his room for a couple of hours while his spirit went forth to help Mathur attain the goal to get liberation. Ramakrishna sat in samadhi and he visited through that path of light to Mathur's place and helped him in getting release, liberation out of that body. So while his spirit, Ramakrishna's spirit, went forth to help Mathur attain the goal, at 5 o'clock, Sri Ramakrishna came out of Samadhi and said to Hriday, the companions of Divine Mother, see here the words, what Sri Ramakrishna is telling. How was the death of Mathur Babu? The Mathur Babu's death was so fine. He's telling the companions of Divine Mother, Kali, took Mathur with love and care into their celestial chariot. I'll read it again. It's so wonderful. It's so much of service has not gone waste. How can it be? Even we can't think like that. Ramakrishna is telling he had been to that place in Samadhi, sitting here in Dakshineshwar itself. He could travel to any place. I have told that the Ashtasiddhis, one of the Ashtasiddhis is you can just visit wherever you want. Your mind wishes, the body here, the body or the soul can go there and see everything in seconds or millionth of second and go back, come back to that body. So Ramakrishna sitting there in Samadhi, he visited Mathur in the house and saw that he got out of that body in a very smooth way. And now he's telling the companions of the Divine Mother took Mathur with love and care into their celestial chariot, and his soul has ascended to the sphere of the Divine Mother, that is Devi Loka. The Lord will take so many different forms. Just like for the devotees of Vishnu, it is Vaikuntha. Just like the devotees of Rama, it will be Ramaloka. For Krishna, it is Goloka. You can live with Krishna. The devotees can live with Krishna for many, many years if they are devotees of Krishna, Vishnu, Narayana. They can live with them. That is Vaikuntha. For Shiva, it is Kailasa. So they can live with Shiva for as many years they like and then merge into the liberation. Then there is the Brahmaloka. You can live in Brahmaloka also, people who want spiritual things. But if you have desire to enjoy the world, then it will be heaven, Indraloka. Then come back again to this world to enjoy this hog plum or this sufferings and everything in this earth. You come back again after nicely getting so much of difficulties and beatings and little joy. And again, you will get Vairagya, renunciation. There is nothing, no joy. Infinite joy will be your goal then. Then you will aspire for liberation. So now, Devi Loka. There is also this Devi Loka, Divine Mother's Loka. You can stay with the Divine Mother, serve her as much as you want. Then if you want liberation, you can get, or you can come back again. So now, the celestial chariot, the companions of Divine Mother, took Mathur with love and care into their celestial chariot, and his soul has ascended to the sphere of the Mother, that is Devi Loka, sphere of the Mother, Devi Loka. Later that night, the news reached Dakshineshwar that Mathur had passed away just at 5 o'clock. Mathur's, when Ramakrishna here sitting in Dakshineshwar, he told he went into Samadhi at 5 o'clock and visited that place. Exactly at that time, the news came that Mathur had given up his body. Mathur's service to the master is now a legend. In later years, Sri Ramakrishna was never tired of telling the devotees about him, the service of Mathur. Ramakrishna was never tired of telling the service, the great service which Mathur performed. Once one of the devotees asked the master, "Sir, what became of Mathur after death?" Somebody asked Ramakrishna, "What became Mathur after death? Surely he wouldn't have to be born again, would he?" The master replied, "Perhaps he has been born as a king somewhere else. He has been born because of that service. He had some desire to enjoy. The enjoyments were not yet complete. So Ramakrishna told perhaps he has been born as a king somewhere. He still had a desire for enjoyment. Then he changed the subject. Ramakrishna would not go to speak such things of after birth and after death and those things, so that people should not deviate and give their interest to these things and forget God. So then he changed the subject. But no matter what happened to Mathur after his death, he undoubtedly loved and served the master with all his heart. And more important, he realized who Ramakrishna was. Once he said to Sri Ramakrishna, Father, there is nothing inside you but God. So this was the statement of Mathur about Sri Ramakrishna. What did he tell? What did Mathur tell? And more important, Mathur realized who Ramakrishna was. Once he said to Sri Ramakrishna, Father, Baba, there is nothing inside you but God. There's nothing inside you but God. This was the statement of Mathur. So by all these statements, you can see the spiritual progress of Mathur. So now we shall enter into the spiritual life. As an aspirant, the sadhaka, Sri Ramakrishna is a sadhaka. Now he's started to practice the Vatsalya Bhava, taking himself as the mother of God. Now, father of God also can be taken. Now, particularly the Ramayata Sadhu, Jatadhari has come. So Sri Ramakrishna has taken the attitude of Mother Kausalya. So yesterday I was telling about that Kausalya Suprajarama Purva Sandhya Pravartate Uttishta Narashardula. Nara Shardula, a lion amongst men. Kartavyam Daiva Mahnikam. You have a lot of duties to do. The God's work, seva has to be done. So now, who told this? It comes in Ramayana. These were the words. Kausalya Suprajarama means the child of Kausalya. So it was told by Vishwamitra. While taking him to the forest, he saw his ashrama there in the forest. On the way, while Ramachandra was sleeping, he was looking at the beautiful face of Sri Ramachandra, that boy Ramachandra. And then what lucky Mother Kausalya would be to see your face every day. Wake up. That is the words which comes in Valmiki Ramayana. It is written in Sanskrit, Valmiki Ramayana. That has been taken here to the Venkateshwara Suprabhata that starts with that words of Vishwamitra. So now, in this way, Ramakrishna now is developing that Kausalya attitude towards Ramachandra, being the mother. And now, that sadhana earlier he had done Madhurabhava, so it was very easy for him to have that mood of a woman and feel she is the mother, Ramakrishna is the mother, and baby Ramachandra will be the child. The master's love and devotion to Rama revived in the company of Jatadhari. The form that he now saw in the image under the revived impulse was that of child Rama. So we can now have a relationship with God. Suppose you want to be a devotee of Sri Ramachandra, then you can have the attitude of the mother Kausalya or Dasharatha and see Ramachandra as a child, then treat him like that. Or even if in your house you have a small child, think of that child as a Ishtadevata, your Ishtadevata, like Ramakrishna or Ramachandra or Krishna, and serve them, treat them. So when he grows up, you can see the Lord as your friend. Then that is Sakha. Just like there are Panchabhavas, Sakhya Bhava, friend. Then you can see the Lord as your husband. Then you can see the Lord as your father, mother. Like that, every day you can change, or in next month you can change the attitude and enjoy. So that's the speciality of Hinduism. Here you have so much of freedom. Your Ishtadevata, maybe Ramakrishna, maybe Sharda Devi, maybe Sita Mata, maybe Lakshmi, maybe this thing you can all enjoy the presence as your friend, as your child, as your husband, as your whatever you way, you can. At that time, whatever mood is prevailing in you, stronger mood. So you can enjoy the Lord presence in that way. So now the form that he saw now in the image under the revived impulse was that of child Rama, the embodiment of spiritual love. Therefore, it is no wonder that his mind was now filled with maternal affection, motherly affection for that divine child. The master began to feel towards the divine child that wonderful love and attraction which a mother feels towards her young child. That love and attraction alone doubtless made the master now sit beside the child image of Ramalala and look at it so intently that he did not know how time slipped away. For by means of various sweet childish pranks, the master said the extraordinary effulgent child made him forget everything else, tried to detain him daily by his side, kept on watching him expectantly when he moved away, and accompanied him everywhere in spite of his request not to do so. The active mind of master could not leave any work half done. So what is that we have to learn from Sri Ramakrishna? A very great thing, a very great attitude. From his childhood, he had that as devotees of Sri Ramakrishna, we should also inculcate into our personality this wonderful quality of Sri Ramakrishna. What is that? The active mind of Master Sri Ramakrishna could not leave any work half done. It's a wonderful quality which we, all of us, our natural trend is to take up some work and leave it half done or even one fourth done and forget about it. We never complete anything. So here you can see that wonderful, great character of Sri Ramakrishna is the active mind of Sri Ramakrishna could not leave any work half done. So let us inculcate that beautiful quality, one of the great quality of Sri Ramakrishna. No work should be half done, complete it. This was true of him in regard to matters of the external world as also to the ideal realm of the spirit. Not only the worldly work or the work in the world or whatever activities in the world, Ramakrishna could not do half with half-heartedness, or even the work would be incomplete. So whatever he takes up, until it is completed, he would not rest. So that was the great willpower of Sri Ramakrishna, which all of us have to develop as devotees. Now, this was true of him in regard to matters of external world, ordinary works, smallest works, tidbits, everything. Any small work, he would not leave it half complete. That's why you can see one of the great statements of Swami Vivekananda is don't judge the greatness of a person by the big works, the great works he does. Even an ordinary fool can do great works when thousands of people are watching him. Out of that inspiration, because thousands of people are watching me, so even the most ordinary, vilest of the fool will perform wonderful jobs, great jobs, when thousands of people are working, watching him and praise him. But the greatness, real greatness of a person lies in the smaller work, tidbits, small works, when no people are watching him. How does he perform that work? Watch him. Then you can see the real greatness of that person. So if you want to judge the real greatness of the person, don't judge him by the great works and the performance of big works he does when thousands of people are watching him. But watch the small works the works which are thought that it is very simple and very little, when no people are watching him, how does he perform that work? That can decide the real greatness of that person. This is the statement of Swami Vivekananda. So, if you want to understand the greatness of that person or the family, go and visit their toilet and bathroom and other places where it is hidden. The outer veranda, the where the showcases will be there, the guest will be there. It will be so beautiful. Everything will be arranged so nicely. And when you go out to the market or you go to the function, you'll be dressed up very well and all the best will come out. But how the work is done when nobody is watching you inside the house, how your smaller works are done, how do you keep your toilet, is it kept clean, everything. So in the smaller works, the greatness of that person can be decided. This is the great statement of Swami Vivekananda. Now it can be seen that Ramakrishna, this was true of Sri Ramakrishna in regard to matters of external world, even the ordinary worldly works, whatever Ramakrishna is to take up, like washing the vessels or keeping something in his Dakshineshwar room or wherever. He would not misplace anything. He had trained the direct disciples also like that. The object has to be kept in that particular place. Suppose you keep that today in that place for some usage, it has to be kept back after using in the same place. And that object, any object you are using, should be maintained very well. It is to be taken care of. So today I throw away something here, then take up, and another day to search that, it will take me 2 or 3 hours. I just throw away carelessly everything. I don't keep back in its proper place. It will waste so much of your energy. It will waste so much of your endeavor. You'll be searching for that again and again. So much of time is gone, energy is gone. So Ramakrishna used to always tell, train up his disciples, and also Mother Sharda Devi was also trained like that. Wherever the particular thing has to be kept, keep that in the same place. Don't misplace it anyway, here and there. I have seen so many devotees coming, they come here and forget everything. And when they go halfway, they make a phone call, I've forgotten my key of my house, I've forgotten my license, I've forgotten this, I've forgotten that, and they come back. So, devotees of Ramakrishna, our mind should be alert, living in the presence. I also can do mistakes, I have also done, but we have to learn from Sri Ramakrishna and we have to be alert. I also once I went to the airport in a hurry and forgot my passport. Then with great difficulty somehow our chairman could manage and he could take me to the other place without my passport. From Johannesburg to this thing, we had that copy of the passport. So general tendency of us is to do work haphazardly and without care, without alertness, and we'll be in trouble. So much of energy in wasted. So by every details of Ramakrishna's life, we have to learn. We can do every work with perfection. That's what Sri Ramakrishna is teaching us. So when we study the lives of great people, so we can learn all these things. So now this was true of Sri Ramakrishna. In matters of external world, ordinary small works, he would not do it halfway or half-mindedness. Perfectly. Even the smallest work he used to do, even if it is worldly work, he used to do with perfection. This was true of Sri Ramakrishna in regard to matters of external world and also to the ideal realm of spirit, whether it is. Now, whatever you do in the worldly, the same thing comes to in the spiritual life too. So there is a great statement one by great sage, Saint Basavanna, that is called Veerashaiva Sampradaya. He started that Sampradaya. He was a prominent leader in Karnataka. He's there, Basavanna. So his great teaching is Illi Salluvavanu, Allu Salluvavanaya. Whatever way you do the worldly or the smallest work here, the same mind of ours will do the work when we are doing spiritual works too. Suppose I neglect and do the work haphazardly, even the worldly work. Do you think you have a special mind while you do the spiritual work? It is the same mind which comes there. So it will do the work in spiritual world also haphazardly, and the result will be half. So that's why even the worldly work, smallest work, you take up even the ordinary, most ordinary work, do it perfectly. Then the same trained mind will start working even at the realm of the spiritual life, and you will get the good result. That's why Sri Ramakrishna, that attitude while doing even the most ordinary work, it may be the household work or anything, sweeping, mopping, keeping something in its own place, whatever work you do it with alertness and great care. Should enjoy that. Do it as a service to the Lord. Every work, even keeping that broom after sweeping at that place, do it with great alertness and as a service to the Lord. Then you will be doing wonderfully well. Then the same trained mind will come to your help while you are performing even greater works and spiritual life too. That's why Mother, Holy Mother Sharada Devi, when she saw one of her niece or that relative, she, after sweeping the broom, she threw it to its place and pushed it with her leg. Then Mother scolded her, called her, and told, "What is this? Is this the way to keep the broom? It may be a broom. You may think that it is a very ordinary thing. You cannot throw it away. You have to give the respect due to the broom. In my house, the broom also has its place. You have to treat it, that vastu, as the Lord's object. Everything belongs to Lord. So you can't just throw away or just push it with your leg." So Mother scolded her. Keep it in the proper place, in a proper way. We were taught when we were young children, after sweeping, the broom has to be placed in its proper place, wherever the broom has to be kept, in a proper way, not just throwing down or something. The broom has to be kept upward like this. Everything, how to hold in your hands and how to sweep, all were taught. So we have to be trained properly, train our own mind. The trained mind will be your friend. Untrained mind will be your enemy. That's what Lord Krishna tells in Bhagavad Gita. Your mind will become friend and your mind will become enemy. So when you train it properly, controlled mind will be your friend. It will help you everywhere. But uncontrolled, undisciplined, untrained mind will be your enemy everywhere. Trained mind will be your friend and it will help you go forward. So here we can learn it from Sri Ramakrishna. He used to do everything, smallest work to in perfection, and that you could see expressed in spiritual life too. It was seen that if any idea arose of its own accord in his heart, he would not rest satisfied without reaching its ultimate limits. On studying that nature of his, some readers may think, but is it good? Is it beneficial to a man to run in pursuit of any and every idea that may arise in his mind at any time and become a tool in its hand? Although that nature of the master did not lead him astray, it would go only towards the higher things to realize God. It should not be imitated by people in general as much as all ideas, good and bad, arise in the minds of weak humanity. So whatever idea come to your mind, that should not be taken up, is being told by Sharadanandaji Maharaj, because his mind was very pure. His thoughts would be only pure thoughts and high spiritual things. So if so many bad things also start coming in your mind, should you then go on doing that? No. All the thoughts, only pure thoughts and good thoughts. That's why I have told you many times, Shubhasya Shighram. What is that? Shubhasya, only good work have to be done very fast. Ashubhasya, bad deeds, bad thoughts, delay it, postpone it. Don't do the reverse. We generally tend to do the bad things very fast, and good things we go on procrastinating. So here we have to do good things only. We have to do it fast. We have to do with great alertness. So Ramakrishna could do it because his mind was so pure. Only good thoughts would come to his mind. So man should never have such a faith in himself as to believe that only good ideas will arise in his mind. Therefore, it should be the aim of man to rein in his desires, This is no doubt a reasonable argument, but there is another side to it on which we have something more to say. And what is that Sharadananda Maharaj is trying to tell us? We can by no means deny that the mind of a man excessively desirous of enjoying lust and gold and completely fettered by them should not repose so much faith in itself. Therefore, it is only the ignorant and the short sighted who would question the need for people in general to control their desires. But with some rare sadhakas, the Vedas and the other scriptures say self control becomes, by the grace of God, as normal a function as breathing. Therefore, completely freed from the attraction of the lust and gold, their minds get converted into repositories of good and healthy ideas only. The Master also said that no evil desire can, by the grace of Divine Mother, raise its head and have mastery over the mind of a man who has taken perfect refuge in Divine Mother or in God. So, any people who have really, surely, truly taken refuge, surrendered at the feet of God, they cannot take any wrong decision. So, any bad things cannot be done by them. The Lord will protect them, even though there may be sometimes cropping up bad thoughts and other things. The Lord will not allow them, He will protect them. So that is what Ramakrishna used to tell. The Master also said that no evil desire can, by the grace of the Divine Mother, raise its head and have mastery over the mind of a man who has taken perfect refuge in her. He said, Mother prevents him from taking a wrong step. It's just like expert dancers or expert singers, they cannot commit any mistake in their dancing because they have been so much used to. They can't sing a wrong tone. They can't keep a wrong step. Suppose by accident they keep a wrong step or sing some wrong tune, then from the next day that will become a special trend. Even a small slip or mistake in the great dancer or a very well learned musician or an expert, then it will become a next special step. It will become a new school. So the words of Sri Ramakrishna is here. The Master also said that no evil desire can, by the grace of Divine Mother, raise its head and have mastery over the mind of a man who has taken perfect refuge. You may tell in your mind, oh, I have surrendered to God, I have done this. That will not do just by words. Real surrender, which was taken perfect refuge in the Divine Mother. He said, Mother prevents him from taking a wrong step. A man who has reached such a state can perfectly trust each and every impulse of his. A man who has reached such a stage where he has completely surrendered to God and God takes care of everything. As I told you many times, that shloka ananyas chintayanto mam, completely you have given your mind to God, then God will take care of everything of yours. So a man who has reached such a state can perfectly trust each and every impulse of his. Then it not only does him no harm, but becomes a source of immense good to others. Not only the desires which arises in such a mind, it will not do any harm to him, but also it will be a source of wellness and immense source of good to others. For it becomes absolutely impossible for that man to seek self-interest in that state, inasmuch as the little I, the ego, which is born of the identification with the body, which produces selfishness, and which remains ever unsatisfied with worldly enjoyments, is merged forever in the all pervading eye of God. It's just like a funny incidents happened in my life. I had never any problem from my childhood of my tooth decay or any problem of the tooth. I had perfect health of the tooth. There was no problem at all. But after joining the ashram, what happened was I started getting this wisdom tooth. So one of the wisdom tooth on one side started coming in a very peculiar fashion, and it was pushing the another, that molar tooth, or that tooth with the nearby, the last tooth there. It was pushing. So that started forming some gap underneath that tooth because of the pushing, and their food material started accumulating, and there was a carrion decay, and there was tooth pain. And to go to the doctor, the doctor told there is a carrion, and he had to remove that tooth. So, but before removing that, he wanted to, the wisdom tooth could be removed, but that tooth which was good and healthy, and now it is decaying because of the push of that wisdom tooth, he wanted to save it. So took out all the this thing, drilled inside and removed all the things, and he filled up with some metal or whatever, cement. It's called cement. Some prosthetics he filled in, and put a cap on that. All those things, and the wisdom tooth, the one which was coming in a different way, was removed. Then he also told that when the wisdom tooth comes, please remove all of them, otherwise it will be a problem at source of problem to you. So one by one, as the wisdom tooth was coming up, I went to the doctor, and each year I removed it. All the 4 wisdom tooth were removed. So when I used to go to remove the wisdom tooth to the dentist, then one of the devotees asked me, Swamiji, if you remove all your wisdom, won't your wisdom reduce then? What will happen to your wisdom if you remove all the wisdom tooth? Then won't your wisdom reduce? I told, yes, that is what I want. What is this, Swamiji? You want that your wisdom should be reduced? Yes. When my puny little wisdom, when my small wisdom is removed, then the God's large wisdom, huge wisdom will start acting through me. When I remove the wisdom born out of my ego, the puny wisdom which I have, when I remove that, remove my ego, remove all that ideas of ego, then the vast wisdom of the Lord will start manifesting in me. Then the devotee start keeping quiet. So I want that my wisdom should go away. All the wisdom should go away. Whatever I have learned until now, I have to unlearn it, undo it, because of my ego. So now when I remove my ego, I become an instrument in the hand of the Lord. I don't want my puny little wisdom. I want the wisdom of the Lord to manifest through me. So that's why I have to remove all the 4 wisdom tooth. That's a funny thing. That's a different thing. But here we have to take the essence of it. So here, so Ramakrishna is telling, mother prevents the devotee who has completely surrendered at her feet. She prevents him from taking a wrong step. A man who has reached such a state can perfectly trust in each and every impulse of his. Then it not only does him no harm, but becomes a source of immense good to others. For it becomes absolutely impossible for that man to seek his self-interest in that state, inasmuch as the little I, which is born of identification with the body, which produces selfishness, and which remains ever unsatisfied with worldly enjoyments, is merged forever in the all-pervading I of God. Therefore, the will of God, whose nature it is to do good to all, the will of God, suppose your mind is always thinking of doing good to everyone, every time, then you can surely know that the Lord's will has started working through you. So, no selfish ideas in your mind. You don't hanker for enjoyment for yourself, but your thought is always for the well being of others. Then know for sure that the Lord's wisdom has started working through you. So, the little I, which is born of identification with the body, will go away, which produces selfishness, which remains ever unsatisfied with worldly enjoyments, is merged forever in the all pervading I of God. Therefore, the will of God, the will of God, whose nature it is to do good to all. So, doing good to all, if you start getting that idea, then the will of Lord has started working through you. So that is what Sharadananda Ji Maharaj, the great saint, is telling. Therefore, the will of God, whose nature it is to do good to all, then manifests itself as various desires in the mind of the man for universal welfare. And the Lord will use you as an instrument to do his work in this world. So if you remove your puny ego, if you become an instrument, so many times I give the example, suppose you have a pen in your pocket. It's an instrument for you to write. From tomorrow, while you are writing something, the pen will start writing itself another thing. If you are writing from the left to the right, the pen will start from right to the left, or it might be writing something else which you do not want to. It will start writing something of its own. Then what will you do? You will throw away that instrument, that pen, and you take a pen which will write whatever you want to write. So you want a perfect instrument. The same way, the Lord also, when we remove our puny ego and remove our ego and become unselfish, then we can be the sure and good instruments of the Lord. He will start using our personality to do his work in this world. So that's why let us slowly, gradually remove all those egos, surrender at the feet of the Lord. Then the Lord will start making our personality as an instrument to do good to the world. Is it not a great opportunity to become the instruments in the hand of the Lord? Then how is that to be done? We have to remove our ego. If we remove our ego, our selfish desires and selfishness, then the Lord will make us as instruments in his work. Then we'll be doing whatever the Lord wants. We will not be doing anything selfish. So, therefore, the will of God, whose nature is to do good to all, then manifests itself as various desires in the mind of the man for universal welfare. Or the sadhaka in that state always feels in his hearts of hearts, I am the machine. Thou art the machinist. I am the machine. Thou art the machinist. You are the operator of the machine. I am just a machine. The Lord will become the operator then. And being sure that the what appear as desire in his own mind are sprung from the will of God. The all-pervading person, he does not at all hesitate to act according to their urge. The test of such inspired action is that they always bring forth great benefit to others. So what is the litmus test? What is the test to know that whether the Lord's will is acting through you? So Sharadanandaji Maharaj has given the test. What is the test? The test of such inspired action is that they always bring forth great benefits to others. Such a state comes very early in the lives of uncommonly great souls like the Master. Therefore, these great souls, as we read in their biographies, trust completely the inclinations of their minds and very often undertake actions based on them without stopping to reflect and find reason. Therefore, keeping their little wills identified with the universal wills, they can always detect and understand things beyond the minds and intellects of ordinary people, inasmuch as the ideas that come up in their minds are eternal varieties existing in a subtle state in the universal mind. Again, these great souls, although one with normal humanity, distinguish themselves from others by their absolute dependence on the universal will and their from fear, freedom from fear and from pursuit of self-interest. So unlike ordinary men, they are often seen to cooperate with circumstances and activities that cause their own destruction. In spite of their awareness of the ruinous consequences of such a cooperation in advance, not only do they show no aversion to them, but extend a joyous welcome. The reader will understand what we mean if we give a few examples, conscious of the inevitability of Sita's banishment. Rama sent her away to the forest, though he knew that she was innocent. Though he knew that forsaking of Lakshmana was dearer than his life, would inevitably bring his Leela as a human being to an end. He carried it out. Knowing beforehand that the race of Yadus, Yadava race, to which Sri Krishna belonged to, would be destroyed. All his kith and kin, the whole Yadu race will be destroyed. Krishna knew this. Krishna did not make the slightest attempt to prevent it. On the contrary, he acted in such a way as to bring it about at the proper time. Again, knowing it for certain that he would meet with his death at the hands of a hunter, he concealed his whole body carefully behind the leaves of a tree and kept the two reddish feet dangling in such a way that as soon as the hunter saw them, he mistook them for the bird and shot at them with his arrow. He then blessed and consoled the hunter. Lord Krishna then blessed and consoled the hunter who was repenting for his mistake, and then Lord Krishna gave up his body. So wonderful way, many things of Ramayana and the life of Krishna has been brought by Shardanandaji Maharaj, that how those great avatars would be working in tandem, in unison with the will of the Lord, because they have identified themselves with that will of the Lord. We shall go through these because it's very, very important for us to understand. We will have these doubts in our mind. So, banishment of Sita has been taken up here. Shardanandaji Maharaj is telling. How is that if we can understand? So now when the will of the Lord appears in front of them, these great souls, not only do they show no aversion to them, but extend a joyous welcome. The reader will understand what we mean if we give a few examples. Shardanandaji Maharaj now is giving the example how the great souls work in tandem with the will of the Lord, supreme will. Not only do they show no aversion to them, but extend a joyous welcome. The reader will understand what we mean if we give a few examples. Conscious of the inevitability of Sita's banishment, Rama sent her away to the forest. Though he knew that she was innocent, Rama knew that she was innocent, but in the larger interest, to act according to the will of the Lord, though Sita Ma was so loved by Sri Ramachandra, he was ready to give up his selfish thing that the wife is to be protected. So his important thing was Ramachandra's, the will of the Supreme. So he, in tandem with that, though he knew, conscious of the inevitability of Sita's banishment, Rama sent her away to the forest, though he knew that she was innocent. And another thing, example is, though Sri Ramachandra knew that the forsaking of Lakshmana, in the last, he had asked that he will be meeting and nobody should be sent inside. Durvasu Muni came. If he was not allowed, he would have cursed Ayodhya. So out of that fear, to protect Ayodhya, Lakshmana allowed him to come inside. Now Ramachandra had told him, I will be in a meeting. If you allow, then you will be punished for that severely. So though Lakshmana did it to protect Ayodhya, but Ramachandra had to take the step of banishing Lakshmana, forsaking of Lakshmana. Though he knew that forsaking of Lakshmana was dearer to him than his own life, would inevitably bring his Leela. Ramachandra had to give up, he had to go back, give up his avatara here in this world. So would inevitably bring the life, the Leela as a human being to an end. Ramachandra carried it out because he was always working in tandem with the divine will. On the contrary, he acted in such a way as to bring about at the proper time. So now, knowing beforehand that the race of the Yadus, now Shardanandaji Maharaj is talking about Krishna, his own race, the race of the Yadus, Yadavas, to which Sri Krishna belonged, would be destroyed. All of them will die. Krishna did not make the slightest attempt to prevent it. On the contrary, he acted in such a way to bring it about at the proper time. Again, knowing it for certain that he would meet with the death at the hands of the hunter, Sri Krishna concealed his own body carefully behind the leaves of a tree and kept the two reddish feet dangling in such a way that as soon as the hunter saw them, he mistook them for the bird and shot at them with his arrows. Then afterwards, when the hunter came there and he repented, but Sri Krishna blessed him, though he was the cause for that painful thing, arrow struck being hit to his legs, the toes. Sri Krishna blessed and consoled the hunter. Now you should see the greatness of the Lord here. He blessed the hunter and consoled the hunter who was repenting for his mistake, and then Krishna gave up his body. That place where Sri Krishna gave up his body is there away from Dwaraka. If you go a little distance, I had gone to Gujarat and I traveled in all the place in Dwaraka, Bent Dwaraka. So that place is called Prabhas. So that Krishna gave up his body there, Prabhas, there, that spot where Krishna was hit by that arrow, everything is still maintained. If you go to Dwaraka, you can visit this Prabhas. And from there, when his body was consigned to flames, the remnants or the Atmarama, the relics of Krishna, has been bought and been enshrined in Puri Jagannatha. That's why the temple Puri Jagannatha is so famous. So in that three wooden idols, that relics of Sri Krishna is maintained every year, not every year, every 12 years when that wooden Kalebara, they call it in Orissa, Puri Jagannatha. When that is changed, they replace that relics of Lord Krishna from that old image to the new image. So now Krishna blessed that hunter who had hit him. He will now give up his body. But the hunter was repenting. Lord Krishna, you can see the greatness and sacrifice of Sri Krishna. He was working only for dharma, righteousness. He then blessed and consoled the hunter who was repenting for his mistake and gave up his body. So we never read all these things. See, Shardanandaji Maharaj is bringing the wonderful truths, how these great souls would be always working in tandem with the will of the Lord, identifying themselves. No selfishness at all. Selfishness is zero. I is completely removed. You can see it in the life of Lord Krishna or Rama or Ramakrishna. Everywhere you can see the great souls. They become instrument in that great God's, the supreme wills. Although he already knew that he would attain parinirvana or bodilessness in the final beatitude. Who is this? Shardanandaji Maharaj is telling about Buddha, Lord Buddha. Although Lord Buddha knew that he would attain parinirvana, he had to give up the body or bodilessness in the final beatitude if he accepted the hospitality of that Chandala, the low caste person. Buddha accepted the hospitality and ascended to that state, having protected the Chandala by his blessing and consolation from others' hatred and reproach. That Chandala, that low caste person, he entreated Buddha to come to his house, but he was from that habit of eating the pork meat, pig meat. So that Chandala offered it to Lord Buddha. Lord Buddha was very sattvic, so he knew that his body would not digest that pork meat. In spite of that, he knew that he has to give up his body after eating that, but to please that Chandala, so that he should not feel that he is from a low caste and Buddha from a high caste and is not accepting, even though he knew that in that 80th year he will be giving up his body. Buddha accepted that and ate it and gave up his body. So everywhere you can see the sacrifice of these great souls. Although the Lord Buddha already knew that he would attain parinirvana or bodilessness in the final beatitude if he accepted the hospitality of that Chandala, the low caste person. Buddha accepted it and gave up his body, ascended to that state. But before that, he protected the Chandala. Nobody should scold him. Nobody should put him to punishment because you have killed Buddha in this way. He protected, he accepted and ascended to the state, having protected that Chandala by his blessing and consolation from others and hatred and reproach. Again, conscious that the religion preached by him would soon be polluted if he gave his approval to woman's initiation into sannyasa, into his order. So the order will collapse. There will be degradation in the morality. If he gives permission for his auntie or the lady who was there to join the monastic order there, he knew that then Buddhist monastic order will collapse. But even then, he gave permission. That's why you can see Swami Vivekananda had all the knowledge of the history, separated the monastic members. He made a separate thing for the male members, Ramakrishna order and Sharda Math separately. There will be no any way, no connection or anything. It was separated. Even now, that is maintained very strictly because Swami Vivekananda studied all the history. Here, Buddha knew that it is going to be his monastic order, the Buddha Sangha, would be decaying or it would be in the trouble. That would be the first step down. Conscious that the religion preached by him would soon be polluted if he gave his approval to woman's initiation into sannyasa. He permitted the venerable Gautami, his aunt, to be so initiated. He knew that, but in spite of that, he did. In spite of knowing that Judas, his disciple, now Shardanandaji Maharaj is speaking about Jesus Christ. In spite of knowing that Judas, his disciple, would betray him into the hands of the enemy, would put an end to his life, Jesus, another incarnation of God, remained uniformly affectionate to him. We must, on investigation with many such events, even in the lives of persons perfected and liberated in life, not to speak of the incarnation of God, if we try to find a rational reconciliation between such unusual expressions of personal effort, so often seen in the lives of great men, with the theory of their absolute dependence on the universal will, we are inevitably led to the conclusion that their personal efforts are but the manifestations of the same all-pervading will. Therefore, it is clear that all the selfish impressions in the minds of these persons who depend absolutely on God's will are destroyed once for all. So this puny ego will be destroyed, their selfishness will be destroyed. Therefore, it is clear that all the selfish impressions in the minds of these persons who depend absolutely on God's will are destroyed. The selfish impressions will be destroyed once and for all. Their minds ascends to a holy plane of consciousness where pure desires alone, absolutely untarnished by selfishness, arise in them. So freely reposing their faith in the desires of their minds and acting under their impulse, these sadhakas in that state do not incur any blame. Such actions of the master, it goes without saying, should not be imitated by ordinary people like us who have not completely perfectly removed our egos of selfishness. But the sadhakas, the spiritual aspirants in the unique state mentioned above, will no doubt be much enlightened by them in guiding their lives. The scriptures have compared their desires for eating, drinking, etc., which are necessary for the preservation of the life, to fried seeds, just as the roasted seed of the trees, creepers, etc., losing their vital power and cannot germinate. So the worldly desires of those persons roasted over the fire of self-control and divine knowledge can no more draw them towards enjoyment and lead them astray. The master also has commented on this point thus: coming in contact with the philosopher's stone, the touchstone, coming in contact with the philosopher's stone, a steel sword becomes golden. It retains unchanged its formidable form, but it cannot inflict no injury. We all know the touchstone. In olden days, people had the idea of converting everything into gold, so that we know that the thing called alchemistry came up. They wanted to do so many experiments, and that alchemistry came up. Even the seed of science can be seen there. So they did a lot of experimentation and found out that particular thing. It's called touchstone or philosopher's stone. So anything you touch, any baser metal to that touchstone or philosopher's stone, in Sanskrit it is called sparshamani, and it becomes parushamani. The original Sanskrit term is sparshamani. So anything is touched to that, the baser metal will turn into gold. So suppose a sword which can cut and kill and injure many people. So if it is touched by that sparshamani, then it will turn into gold. It will retain that everything of the sword, but it cannot injure anybody after touched by this sparshamani. Likewise, anybody coming in contact with the great souls like Sri Rama, study their life like Sri Krishna, Buddha, and Ramakrishna. So by the touch of the touchstone, so we will lose that portion of injuring others, or the selfishness will gradually vanish. That's what Shraddhananda Maharaj is telling. By studying their life, coming in touch with them, then all that selfishness and all the desires which are there, which can harm others, which can harm ourselves, will be gradually, that effect will be removed, just like the touch of the sparshamani or touchstone or philosopher's stone. So we will end our discussion of Great Master today, now, because we have already completed our time. So now it is time for question and answer. If you have any doubts, if you have any questions, you can ask.
Om Namo Narayana Maharaj.
Om Namo Narayanaya. I think it's Chand, Rup Chand. Please tell Rup Chand.
The lokas that you have been discussing, Brahma Loka and Vaikunt and Devi Loka, the different lokas. We attain that with our karmic reaction and our thinking, and whatever good actions we have been performing. But isn't that it's not a geographical location, it is a state of mind?
It's not a geographical location. It is just like the whole cosmos is in you, within you.
Yes.
It's a plane of existence. It may be interspersing here too. It is just plane of existence. So as you feel, if you think it is a geographical existence, it will be like that. It is all your mind. It is in your mind. The hell, the heaven, and these lokas, it is just your plane of existence.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, Maharaj.
Yes, Rupchand, thank you.
Om.
Any other questions?
Maharaj, Madhu here.
Yes, Madhu.
So, Maharaj, in the today's thing you said about this I which produces selfishness is never satisfied. Why is that case, Maharaj? Because with our experience, we know once you satisfy something, it again sets a next level of desires. Why is this? It's a cyclic. Why doesn't it get satisfied?
It is just like the example is given in our scriptures is, suppose you want to put off the fire. To put off the fire, you use petrol, you use diesel or kerosene or ghee to put off the fire, burning fire. What will happen? Will it douse it or increase it?
It will increase.
Yeah, the same way. So if you give, you want to fulfill the desire of the ego with the selfish things and put it off, it will never happen. I think yesterday in Bhagavad Gita, last Wednesday Bhagavad Gita class, I explained the story of, from the Bhagavata, that great Rishi was doing so much of tapasya for so many thousands of years, submerged in that Yamuna, river Yamuna. His name was Saubhari. He has given the mantra also in Rig Veda. It comes about that great rishi. Not only has given that mantra there, one Samhita is also there in his name. So such a great rishi in the beginning. He was not an ordinary sage. He has attained so much of self-control over his body that he used to submerge himself in river Yamuna and meditate underwater. One day, while he was meditating, he opened his eyes inside the river, hours together, without breathing. He used to be submerged in Yamuna and meditate. One day, when he opened his eyes, he saw two fish mating. This sight carried away his mind and senses, and the desire for sexual association arose in him. This is the story from Bhagavata. He abandoned his spiritual practice and came out of the water, wondering how to fulfill his desire. At that time, king of Ayodhya was Mandata, who was very illustrious and noble ruler. He had 50 daughters, each one more beautiful than the other. So Saubhari approached that king and asked for the hand of one of his 50 princesses. King Mandata wondered about the sanity of the sage and thought to himself, an old man wanting to get married. The king knew Saubhari to be a powerful sage and feared that if he refused, the sage might curse him. But if he consented, the life of one of his daughters would be ruined. He was in a dilemma, so he said, "Oh, Holy One, I have no objection to your request. Please take a seat. I shall bring my 50 daughters before you, and whosoever chooses you will become yours in marriage." The king was confident, and none of his daughters would choose the old ascetic because he was old, and in this way he would be saved from the sage's curse. But that sage Saubhari was all aware because he had so much of yogic power. The king's intention or the mind of the king was read by him. He told the king that he would return the following day. That evening, he used his yogic power to turn himself into a handsome young man. Consequently, when he presented himself in the palace the next day, all the 50 princesses chose him as their husband. The king was bound by the word he had given and was compelled to marry all his daughters to that sage. Now the king was concerned about the 50, the fights that would have taken place amongst the 50 sisters, since they would have to share one single husband. However, Saubhari again used his yogic power, putting the king's apprehension to rest. He assumed 50 forms and created 50 palaces for his wives and lived separately with each one of them. In this manner, thousands of years passed by. The Puranas, that is Bhagavata, states that Saubhari had many children from each of them, and those children had further children until a tiny city had bheen created. And at last, one day, Saubhari came to his senses and exclaimed, "Aho, imam pashyatame vinasham." It is told in Bhagavata, "O humans, those of you who make plans to attain happiness through material acquisitions by fulfilling your enjoyments, be careful. Look at my degradation, where I was and where I am now. I created 50 bodies by my yogic power and lived with 50 women for thousands of years, and yet the senses did not experience fulfillment. They only kept hankering for more and more and more. Learn from my downfall and be warned not to venture in this direction." This is the statement of that Saubhari. So it will never reduce your desires, it will increase, it will inflame. So self-control, the more you go towards God, these things will reduce. So the easiest way is not to worry about that desire and other things. Ramakrishna used to tell one of his devotees when he told that he had this problem of lust and greed. He told, every day there'll be sweating in your body. You will let out your urine and excreta. Do you feel unhappy about it? It is a natural, nature's call. So like that, all these bad things will be there in your mind. Don't worry about that. Just concentrate on thinking, meditating on God, and ignore these things. So your only thing is to go nearer and nearer God. Do more japa, do more puja, go towards God, think of God, meditate on God. Automatically, these desires, this selfish thing will reduce.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you, Maharaj.
Madhu, we have received that yesterday. Our people told that you have sent something. Okay. Oh.
Yeah. Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay. Any other questions? Can we end it with the closing prayer? ॐ प्रियतां पुण्डरीकाक्षः सर्वयज्ञेश्वरो हरिः तस्मिन् तुष्टे जगत्तुष्टं प्रीणिते प्रीणितं जगत् हरिः ॐ तत्सत् श्रीरामकृष्णार्पणमस्तु।